When we think of fighter planes, our imagination often comes less from real history and more from the dazzling, explosive scenes we've seen on the big screen. Hollywood has shaped our perception of aerial combat for decades, with dogfights that look like choreographed dances, one-man armies saving the day, and technology that seems to bend the laws of physics. But while these movies entertain, they often distort or even insult the realities of what real pilots endured and achieved. The truth is far more complex, demanding, and humbling than any 2-hour blockbuster could show. In this story, we'll strip away the myths that Hollywood has fed us about fighter planes and reveal how these fictions often overshadow the skill, sacrifice, and humanity of the men and women who have flown them in real life. The first great myth that Hollywood loves to portray is the idea of the lone wolf ace, who single-handedly changes the course of battle. In films, we see the hero pilot dive into swarms of enemies, firing perfectly aimed bursts of machine gun fire, racking up kill after kill while his squadron is either nowhere to be seen or merely background scenery. This trope creates an exciting story arc, but in reality, air combat has never been about lone wolves. From the earliest days of World War I biplanes to the supersonic jets of today, teamwork, coordination, and discipline have been the foundation of survival. Pilots flew in formations for a reason: to cover each other's blind spots, to increase situational awareness, and to reduce the odds of being ambushed. Even legendary names like the Red Baron or Richard Bong, America's top World War II ace, were never truly alone in combat. They relied on wingmen, ground control, and intelligence networks. A single fighter jet cannot take on entire squadrons, and when pilots did attempt lone attacks, the odds of survival plummeted. To ignore this truth is to diminish the bravery of the countless wingmen whose vigilance kept their leaders alive, and to erase the reality that no air victory has ever been won by a single man in the sky. The myth of the lone wolf ace robs us of understanding just how much aerial combat was about trust, discipline, and the collective effort of many, not just the heroics of one. The second myth is the glamorous dogfight. Hollywood depicts these duels as extended battles, with fighters twisting and turning through the sky in drawn-out contests of skill and endurance. Jets loop endlessly, firing streams of bullets until finally one explodes in flames. But the reality was very different, and often brutally short. In both world wars, dogfights usually lasted only a few seconds. A pilot might not even see his attacker before being hit. Most kills were made by surprise, from an unseen angle, rather than from prolonged cinematic duels. Veteran pilots understood that the one who saw the other first usually won, and that maneuvering wildly in the open sky often exposed you to another unseen enemy. By World War II, many kills happened at long range with a quick burst of fire, and in the jet age, combat became even more sudden, often decided in the span of moments with missiles launched beyond visual range. The Hollywood version makes it look like pilots lived out daring ballet routines in the clouds, but the truth is, real combat was terrifying, chaotic, and over in the blink of an eye. By making it look glamorous, movies erase the sheer tension and fear that accompanied every mission, and they ignore the sobering fact that many pilots never got the chance to fight back at all. The third myth that Hollywood clings to is the idea that pilots are superhuman daredevils who operate on instinct alone. We see the reckless maverick who breaks all the rules, ignores protocol, and somehow succeeds because of his gut feeling. This has created a cultural image of fighter pilots as thrill-seeking adrenaline junkies. But real combat flying demanded almost the opposite. It required intense discipline, relentless training, and respect for procedures. Split-second decisions had to be informed by hours of preparation and drilled instinct, not reckless improvisation. Pilots had to manage their machines, navigate complex instruments, calculate fuel limits, maintain radio discipline, and constantly scan the skies. A lapse in concentration for even a second could mean death. The myth of the instinct-driven hotshot ignores the fact that fighter pilots were also scholars of the air, studying maps, enemy tactics, weather patterns, and their own aircraft's limitations. They were not rebels, but professionals who trained tirelessly to stay alive. To suggest otherwise is to diminish the respect owed to their dedication, their rigorous discipline, and the mental burden they carried. Hollywood celebrates the cowboy in the cockpit, but the truth is that the real heroes were the methodical, steady hands who trusted their training and their team. The fourth myth Hollywood promotes is the invincible aircraft. On screen, we see planes absorbing dozens of hits, trailing smoke and still flying heroically until the pilot makes a dramatic last-minute maneuver or delivers a decisive blow. Explosions light up the sky without consequences for the hero's machine, as if metal and engines can shrug off physics. But real planes were fragile. In World War II, a single well-placed bullet could rupture an oil line, ignite fuel, or disable control surfaces. Even the most advanced fighter jets of the Cold War era were vulnerable to relatively simple problems like bird strikes, mechanical failure, or small fragments of flak. Pilots often said that survival depended as much on luck as on skill because the margin between life and death was razor thin. Aircraft were engineering marvels, but they were also delicate machines that demanded constant maintenance and respect. When Hollywood shows planes as indestructible extensions of their pilots, it undercuts the immense danger those aviators faced every time they took off. To a real pilot, every mission carried the possibility of never returning, no matter how skilled or cautious they were. The myth of the invincible aircraft makes light of those risks and sanitizes the brutal reality of combat aviation. The fifth and perhaps most misleading myth is the clean, consequence-free battle. In movies, we see fighters shot down in fiery plumes, pilots ejecting safely, and the story quickly moving on to the next thrilling scene. Rarely do we see the aftermath, the human cost of being shot down, captured, or killed. In real life, every plane that went down carried not just machinery but a human being whose fate was often grim. Parachuting from a burning aircraft was not a guarantee of survival. Many pilots died in the attempt. Those who landed safely in enemy territory often faced imprisonment, interrogation, or worse. Even for the victorious, the psychological toll was immense. Pilots lived with survivors' guilt, haunted by the memory of comrades who never returned. Hollywood's sanitized depiction of aerial combat strips away this humanity, reducing war to a spectacle of flashing lights and explosions. But real pilots carried scars that never faded. Their battles did not end when the credits rolled. They lived with the weight of loss, trauma, and the knowledge that their survival often came at the cost of others. When we peel back these myths, we begin to see just how much respect is owed to real fighter pilots. They were not superheroes or action stars. They were young men, and later women, trained to an extraordinary degree, facing unimaginable risks in fragile machines, depending on each other, and making life or death decisions in seconds. Their stories are not diminished by the truth. They are made all the more extraordinary because they reveal the raw human struggle behind the legend. To imagine that aerial combat was simply cinematic duels and heroic stunts is to miss the profound reality that these were real people, not characters. They faced fear, doubt, exhaustion, and grief, and yet they climbed into their cockpits again and again. Hollywood myths persist because they serve a purpose. They make stories simple, dramatic, and emotionally satisfying. They give us heroes to cheer for and villains to boo. But when it comes to fighter pilots, those myths can do more harm than good. They risk trivializing the sacrifices of those who fought and died in the air. They risk teaching us to misunderstand what war really is, reducing it to entertainment instead of remembrance. The truth may not be as flashy, but it is deeper, richer, and far more moving. When we honor the reality of these aviators' lives, we not only correct the record, we also preserve the dignity of their struggle. So the next time you watch a Hollywood dogfight, remember that what you're seeing is fantasy. Real pilots did not live in endless duels or fly indestructible planes. They fought in teams, trusted in discipline, and faced sudden, terrifying encounters where seconds meant the difference between life and death. They were not reckless daredevils but disciplined professionals. Their aircraft were not invincible, and their battles carried consequences that lasted a lifetime. These truths are not less exciting than the myths. They are more powerful because they remind us that courage is not about theatrics, but about facing reality with determination and resolve. By separating the myths from the truth, we not only see fighter pilots more clearly, we also learn to respect them in a way that Hollywood never could.